All right, and of course we're here with Chris Morris. Thank you so much for taking the time out and being with us. And we're going to talk about your movie Four Lions, which you co-wrote and directed. And I guess the first question is, did you ever think that you'd have this film distributed, and did you ever think it'd be distributed by Tim League and the Alamo team?
I was obviously hopeful it would be distributed in the States, but no, sort of Tim leapt in like a wildcat, and that was great. You know, it was good to have somebody with basically that much energy involved. But yeah, no, I didn't really have any expectations because, you know, your first film, you don't really know what to expect. Everything's a bit of a buzz, and you sort of you come away going, did anything happen there? I don't know. And this is what happened as a result of South by Southwest, I think.
And now you're here.
Yeah, back here in Austin.
Yeah, and where it all started.
Well, I mean, you know, it's playing at the Paramount in Austin was quite a thing because I went along for a sound check in the morning, and I didn't realise how the ticketing system worked. And I said, "So how many people are coming along tonight?" And the organiser said, "Well, I have no idea." And I kind of imagined we were going to be playing to 17 people. So when all those people came in for the closing film, it was like, "Oh, okay, we're in business."
And you know, the film, it's sort of strange to read about it because it's absolutely hilarious in a very great way that takes something that is iconic, that being terrorists, and turns them into humans.
Now, is that transition from icon to human or from reptile to human?
Well, you know, from my mind, you know, we take figures like Adolf Hitler, or we take figures like Osama bin Laden, and we don't think about them picking their nose or falling in the shower. We think of them as these perfect evil faces. They're visual representations. They're no longer human. And what you've done is taken a group, at least, of wannabe terrorists or minor league terrorists, and turned them into people and found the humor from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, I'll make, you know, the pedantic point that, of course, I mean, why wouldn't they, you know, there isn't a special category of Homo sapiens. It's not quite Homo sapiens, it's Homo shitfucker. You know, people often say it's always rather striking when people who have interviewed Osama bin Laden, you know, people like Peter Bergen or those people who, when he was giving interviews before he became, you know, a bit like Prince, he's incredibly polite. And in fact, there's one British journalist who interviewed him who was offered. Osama bin Laden said to him, "I like your writing, and I see that you understand Arabic culture very well. How would you feel about writing for us, for our outfit?" And this journalist suddenly realised he was in the middle of nowhere. Literally, he'd been driven there in a car boot. He didn't know where he was, and he was the only one. He didn't have an entourage, and he thought, how do you answer that proposition from Osama bin Laden? And he said, "Well, you see, the thing is, Sheikh, I'm not a Muslim," which he thought was quite a good diplomatic answer. The result of it was that Osama bin Laden got up and went and lay down on a couch and just read the papers for an hour. "I'm not talking to you." You know, basically just pulled a sulk, which is quite,
very
again,
Lindsay Lohan of him, sort of.
Well, yeah, but it's not. Is it? You know, it's kind of like a. "Oh, right, yeah, sorry, I'm not talking to you anymore." I said, "No, look, what do you see? What's happening here? Are you still here?" "No, right, you know," and that kind of thing from. You don't expect that from Osama bin Laden. So all of those kind of little stories about whoever, of course, make perfect sense once you get over the fact that they're about the wrong people.
Mm-hmm. And well, you did a ton of research for this, and you know, you get a lot of things right in looking into that world. And I imagine you'd have to take something as serious like that and turn it into comedy. And one of the stories that I remember hearing was one about a group of terrorists going to the end of the dock with a boat and dropping their equipment in and the boat sinking. I was hoping you could tell us maybe a few of the other humorous stories.
It's great to hear someone else doing that back to me because I've just heard that one so many times.
Well, and there's something inherently funny about a screwball comedy about that. You know, any mess up that goes on with that, with the added bonus of, you know, lives aren't lost as a result of the action. But are there other stories that you just loved that you, when you read them, found them very funny, but they didn't quite make their way into the movie?
Yeah, I mean, nothing directly made its way into the film, and there were a lot of stories. It was kind of cumulative. That once, you know, the first one just seemed an exception, and I noted but ignored. And then once they started to come through in a regular drip, I was first surprised, and then I thought of, oh well, of course, right down, the Canadian guys who I think were sent down last year, were quite a big cell, who, had some fairly strong intentions, but would constantly get things wrong. They went camping in the woods. 2 of them ended up sleeping in the van because a mouse ran into the tent and frightened them. They bought some guns, and then they suddenly realised they'd have to hide them, and they didn't know where to hide them, so they dug a hole in a public park, and when they went to look for them again, they'd been nicked. Really just
That's stolen.
rubbish.
That's stolen for Americans.
Yeah.
It all seems like an I Love Lucy episode.
I know. Well, because I think that you're just dealing with average guys. One of them designed a detonator that was designed to protect them all, so that they wouldn't, because they didn't want to be suicide bombers. They did want to, to blow some things up. So he designed a remote-controlled detonator. But the trouble was, its range was only 15 feet. So, and there's intelligence recording the conversation where he's pitching it to the group, and it gets to that point, and it's like, dude, what are you doing?
Also, you make a real small bomb that goes off in a 10-foot radius.
Fine, I'm sure that's happened. I mean, so it was just a case of, and then meeting people who'd been on training camp, and one guy got pulled around by his hair. He had long hair, got pulled around by his hair, and be made an example of because he was a Brit, and Brits always ask too many questions, and all the kind of these rubbishy exchanges in the context of something which is only ever really grandly described. I think that's why it's constantly surprising.
Absolutely, you take those broad ideas and you zoom in on them, and you find kind of the mishaps or just the humanity of it.
Yeah,
it takes away a lot of the fear of those figures, though. You put clown shoes on Satan, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that it's not that the film's trying to claim somehow that an explosion isn't an explosion. But I think it's more a case of just sort of seeing it in 3D. I'm not saying it's a 3D film, by the way. Imagine the labour. You could do it now, couldn't you? You could technically go through and disintegrate the foreground from the background, but we're not going to do that.
It wouldn't look too great right now.
What would be the point?
Yeah. But I guess I get your point, though, to say that you're looking at it all from all angles instead of just the one that we typically see in a news cycle.
Change the lighting.
Exactly. There you go. Well, in that sort of sense, I've actually found out very recently the tiny difference between dark humor and gallows humor.
Please explain.
And I would love to sound like an expert, but I am totally new to this information. But apparently dark humor is when you make light of something that is a little macabre or deadly or sickly. And gallows humor is the exact same thing, but done from the person who is being affected. So it's the self-deprecating dark humor. And I was wondering, there is this sense of gallows
Somebody's about to
humor.
be hanged, cracking a few gags to the crowd.
That's it. The famous story is the prisoner about to be executed, turning to the warden and saying, about the electric chair, "Are you sure this thing's safe?" So I have to imagine that there's a bit more of gallows humor in this because, like most in our modern society, I have to assume that you've been affected by terrorism personally.
But I'm not sure if I'm bravely cracking jokes in the face of terrifying danger in the same way as a man standing on a trapdoor. I think it's because the humour is about the semi-competent function of these guys. It's a different thing, and what it means and how it spreads and how it strikes people, is not a case of. I think it's not really cathartic. There may be something cathartic in it, but it's not primarily just like you're crying, have a laugh and you'll feel better. It's not, it's more spread than that. I mean, if people have a laugh and feel better, fine. I'm not going to try and bring them down.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think you're right about that. I'm not sure if it's completely cathartic. I think there's a lot of laughter involved.
It's like a cathartic joke that actually hasn't cathartized anything.
Which is kind of weird because it's more of an uneasy feeling to
so
laugh.
So it's a trick. It feels cathartic, but in actual fact, the bogeyman's still there.
You're going to feel more uneasy.
Why?
So,
Duh!
What have you done?
Yeah, I've done it. I've issued a false promise.
Well, did you intend to issue that false promise when you started this film?
No.
I mean, what was the?
No.
What
I
was
mean,
the-
because it wouldn't. You know, if I was claiming this will make everything better, then yeah, that's bad medicine, snake oil.
Do you hope
But-
to make a film soon that'll end terrorism?
Yeah, that's a plan. How would you do that? You'd have to discredit terrorism. I think you could. I'm surprised the CIA haven't tried some sort of psyops which discredits terrorism by... have you come across a guy called Adam Gadham, who basically
I haven't.
is an American convert who is Al-Qaeda's English spokesman?
Okay.
Crops up on YouTube quite a lot. He's an ex-death metal fan. But he suggests a kind of character whereby you could, you could undermine the project considerably by casting the wrong person.
Mhm.
If, for example, Joaquin Phoenix had joined the Taliban,
Which he can't. I think he was.
he was
growing
heading that
beard.
way. But if he joined the Taliban, if he'd actually become inserted into the operations, I think the rest of them would just run for the hills and give up.
So that's the key. Maybe you need to. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
in touch with Joaquin.
Him, Adam
or-
Sandler, just get a few people in who are just going to bring the site down.
Yeah. See, I think the key is maybe not make a movie, but you give everyone Twitter and Skype, and eventually, that human connection over broadband
Overwhelms
will-
everything.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's harder to bomb
You
someone if you
hippie.
know them.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
But then you would have to know everyone.
Well, I think that's the next step.
I mean, it's the next step is everyone knowing everyone. Yeah, I like this. Okay.
It's not the 15 minutes.
So
of
there's
fame
two
with that.
simple projects.
Right.
One is insert Adam Sandler and Joaquin Phoenix into the. I mean, they made the mistake of saying the Taliban, but what we mean is Al Qaeda because
Right.
they're different. And the other one is everyone gets to know everyone. Cool.
So if you can get to work on that, that would be great.
Sure. That's like supercharging, turbo-powered social networking. How would you do it? You'd have to do it on micro time. It would have to happen in sleep. You wouldn't get much time to know anyone, but you would know everyone.
Exactly.
Isn't that where we're heading? That is where we're heading,
I
actually.
think so. Well, I mean, you talk about filmmaking in this and idea of changing minds, and you have people like Dr. Seuss working for the U.S. during World War II.
What did he do?
He was a writer and animator for propaganda films.
But I haven't seen it.
They had a grouping rather of different cartoons that were sort of instructional for the military men in uniform that were overseas.
What was the character?
The character was Private Snafu.
Okay.
This is a character, and he was just kind of a goofy Elmer Fudd-like character who was messed up. He wasn't what you wanted to be like, and it kind of showed the comeuppance there. But Dr. Seuss also wrote, and he directed one of them. And the other was Frank Capra directed one of the films, and their Victory and or our role in Japan and our role in Germany.
So what's the modern equivalent?
I don't know. I don't know that there is a lot of that sort of propaganda. I know that there are, training videos and that sort of thing being made for our military, but
Yeah, and certain people are given sort of special access to the State Department, etc., etc. Because obviously they might help.
yeah. Well, because their name would be attached to it as well.
Yeah, and if you can infiltrate, if you can get, if you can get your own views. So I wonder what Al Qaeda are doing. I wonder who they're approaching.
Who they're approaching? Well,
Yeah,
not Joaquin
you
Phoenix.
evolve,
Not
maybe.
Joaquin Phoenix, apparently.
As far as we know.
Well, what is your ultimate goal with the film beyond making anyone laugh? Is that where it stops for you, just being a comedy, or is there something beyond that?
Well, I mean that is obviously the main thing. I think what follows from people laughing is, is up to them. I mean, if you walk out laughing, then either people are going to think you're a bit simple, or maybe they'll ask you why, and maybe I don't know. I mean, people seem to want to talk about the film where we've shown it in Britain, and people seem surprised by things about it. People were surprised when a lot of British Muslims started adopting it, or using catchphrases from it. Or a friend of mine texted me from the cinema where he was about the only white person in there, and he was sitting next to a load of girls wearing niqabs, and he said every time they laughed, their veil kind of straightened out in front of them, and kind of fluttered and then came down. And he was sort of, those kind of surprising adoptions of it are always good, and maybe that's why. People talking about it afterwards, fine. Come on, talk about it, and then someone will overhear you, and then they'll go and see it as well. It's just here for the money.
Excellent. Well, it is a very funny film, and I do thank you for taking the time out. I know you're probably really busy with.
No, I'm not. I'm just sitting around here. We could do the whole thing again if you want.
Well, regardless, Chris Morris, thanks a lot.
Thank you.